Shadows over the Goblin Cave. The sun dipped low over the whispering woods, casting long shadows that danced among the ancient trees. At the edge of a dense thicket, a small stream trickled from a dark tunnel carved into the hillside. A goblin cave. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant murmurs of creatures unseen. Ilara Morningvale stood motionless among the thorny bushes near the cave entrance, his elven eyes piercing the gloom. Clad in dark leathers, twin swords sheathed at his sides, and a bow slung across his back, he blended seamlessly with the shadows. The weight of his past pressed upon him, a constant companion he could neither escape nor embrace. Voices, guttural and sharp, echoed from nearby, goblins quarreling as they often did. A rustle behind him signaled Doreen's approach. The human rogue moved with practiced stealth, her eyes alight with mischief. "They're distracted," Ilara whispered without turning. Doreen flashed a sly grin. "Perfect. An opportunity ripe for the taking," she murmured, her fingers itching to pilfer whatever the goblins might carry. "I'll fetch the others." Ilara gave a curt nod, his gaze never leaving the cave. As Doreen slipped away, Ilara's thoughts drifted to the darkness within himself, a mirror to the shadows around him. He pushed the memories aside, focusing on the task at hand. Back at the clearing, Morthal Pashtor stood tall, his armor bearing the marks of countless battles. The cleric's eyes were steady beneath his helm, exuding a calm authority that had earned him the respect of many soldiers. Beside him, Balin's stonehammer rested on his massive glaive, the dwarf's silent presence as solid as the mountains of his homeland. Zyra Darkmire leaned against a tree, adjusting the intricate folds of her crimson robe to perfection. Her fiery hair cascaded over her shoulders, every strand meticulously in place. Doreen emerged from the shadows, a hint of excitement in her step. "2 goblins by the entrance," she reported, her voice carrying a playful lilt. "Ilara's keeping watch. Seems they're not paying much attention." "Then we have the element of surprise," Morthal replied thoughtfully. "We must act swiftly." Balin gripped his glaive tighter, his stoic expression unchanging. Zyra glanced at her polished nails, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. "Goblins are hardly a challenge," she said, her tone dripping with casual disdain. "But if we must dirty our hands—" "Every coin counts," Doreen interjected, her eyes gleaming at the thought of loot. Morthal's gaze hardened slightly. "Remember, our goal is to search for and rescue the rock-seeker dwarfs that may be captured by goblins. Stay focused." "Of course, dear leader," Zyra purred, batting her lashes. "Lead the way." They moved toward the cave, crossing the shallow stream with care. Ilara rejoined them, his expression unreadable. "They're just ahead," he whispered. "Arguing over something trivial." Morthal nodded. "Balin, you and I will engage them directly. Doreen, take them from the flank. Zyra, stay further and provide support." "Always keeping me at a distance," Zyra muttered under her breath, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle from her robe. Morthal advanced steadily towards the goblin's location, his eyes focused and his steps deliberate. As they approached, Balin's grip tightened and he suddenly charged past Morthal. "Out of my way!" he called, his glaive sweeping in deadly arcs. From the rear, Zyra and Doreen provided support, letting loose arrows and fire bolts. The goblins barely had time to react. Balin's glaive sliced through one, the creature dropping without a sound. Doreen's arrow found its mark in the second goblin's shoulder. It screeched, turning to flee. "Not so fast," Morthal whispered, stepping on the goblin's path and blocking her way to the cave. Zyra sauntered forward, her fingers tracing her focus crystal. "Allow me to finish this," she said, her voice sweet yet laced with cold intent. A bolt of fire erupted from her palm, engulfing the goblin. Its screams echoed briefly before silence fell. Efficient, Morthal acknowledged, though a hint of concern flickered in his eyes as he glanced at Zyra. She met his gaze with a sly smile. I do try. Balin inspected the fallen goblins, his face unreadable. They won't be warning anyone now. Let's see, Doreen chimed, already rifling through the goblin's belongings. Leave it, Morthal ordered gently. We can search later. Our priority is to rescue the Rock-Seekers. Doreen pouted. Fine, but don't blame me if we miss something valuable. Ilara stepped from the bushes he had been hiding in, his eyes scanning the darkness ahead. The wolves are restless. Morthal turned to him. Wolves? He nodded. I can hear them. Chained, but dangerous. Perhaps we can avoid them, he suggested. Where's the fun in that? A little excitement might do us good, Doreen teased. Let's proceed carefully, Morthal said, ignoring her jibe. They ventured deeper into the cave, the air growing colder. The howls of wolves echoed ominously. As they rounded a bend, 3 wolves came into view, each chained to the cave wall, their eyes glowing with feral hunger. Poor creatures, Doreen remarked, though her tone was more intrigued than sympathetic. Think they'd fetch a good price. Focus, Morthal cautioned. They're a threat. Balin stepped forward, glaive at the ready. I'll handle them. Morthal moved beside him, lifting his hammer to ready position. The wolves strained against their chains, snapping and snarling. Without warning, one broke free, lunging at Morthal. He tried to sidestep, but the wolf bit him painfully before Morthal's warhammer connected and killed the wolf. Balin engaged the second wolf, his polearm flashing. The creature was fast, but he was faster, his glaive moving as extensions of himself. Need a hand? Doreen called, losing an arrow that struck the third wolf. I've got it, Balin replied curtly, dispatching his foe. Zyra watched from a distance, a faint smile on her lips. Well done, everyone, though I do hope we find something more challenging ahead. Your arrogance will be your downfall, Morthal said quietly as he approached her. She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming like embers. Confidence, dear Morthal, not arrogance. There's a difference. Save it, Balin interjected. We need to keep moving. Ilara had been again watching the fight from the distance and observing the tunnel ahead. I scouted ahead briefly. Goblins guard a bridge there. Then that's our path, Morthal decided. Lead the way. They proceeded with caution, Ilara at the forefront. As they neared the bridge, the sound of running water grew louder, mingling with the hushed whispers of goblins. Peering around a corner, Ilara spotted 2 goblins stationed on a rickety bridge over the stream. He signaled to the others, his eyes conveying the plan. Doreen grinned mischievously. Time for a little fun. Before they could act, a loose stone skittered beneath Zyra's foot. The goblins snapped to attention. Intruders, one shrieked, firing an arrow in their direction. Brilliant, Ilara muttered, retreating as the goblins sounded the alarm. Perhaps if someone hadn't worn heels into a cave, Balin quipped. Zyra shot her a withering glance. Fashion doesn't rest for expediency. Enough, Morthal commanded. We need to... A distant rumble interrupted him. The sound grew rapidly, a roaring torrent echoing through the tunnels. Flood trap, Balin shouted. Brace yourselves. The wall of water slammed into them with ferocious force. Balin planted his glaive into the ground, holding firm. Morthal grabbed onto a rocky outcrop, his muscles straining. Doreen, light on her feet, leapt onto a ledge. Ilara reached for a handhold, but slipped, the weight of his past seeming to drag him down. As he was swept away, he caught a glimpse of Zyra struggling against the current. Her eyes widened in surprise as the current was too strong. They were both pulled into the swirling waters, darkness enveloping them. They were spat out at the cave entrance, the cold air biting against their soaked skin. Ilara coughed, pushing himself upright despite the bruises that screamed in protest. He turned to Zira, who lay motionless beside him, her once perfect attire now torn and muddied. "Zira," Ilara called softly, shaking her shoulder. Zira's eyes fluttered open, her gaze unfocused. "My dress," she whispered weakly. A laugh escaped Ilara, unexpected and brief. "You're alive." Footsteps splashed through the shallow water as Morthal and the others approached. Relief washed over his face at the sight of them. "Are you both all right?" "Never better," Zira groaned, attempting to stand but wobbling unsteadily. Balin offered a hand, which she eyed skeptically before accepting. "I suppose gratitude is in order," she said, glancing at Ilara. Ilara shrugged, his expression guarded. "We're a team." Doreen hopped down from the ledge, shaking water from her boots. "Well, that was invigorating. Perhaps next time we avoid triggering traps." "Perhaps," Morthal agreed, a hint of admonishment in his tone as he looked at Zira. She lifted her chin defiantly. "I didn't hear any complaints when my magic saved us earlier." "Enough," Balin rumbled. "We need to rest and regroup." They made camp nearby, tending to their wounds. As the morning turned to afternoon, the group settled into a short rest. Ilara sat apart from the others, staring into the heavens. Memories haunted him, the faces of his lost family, the forbidden magic that had consumed everything he loved. A soft rustle drew his attention. Doreen sat beside him, offering a piece of dried fruit. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ilara accepted it with a nod. "Just memories." "Bad ones, I gather." Doreen leaned back, her eyes studying Ilara's face. "We all have our demons." Ilara glanced at her, noticing a rare seriousness in the rogue's eyes. "Yours don't seem to weigh you down." Doreen smiled wryly. "I prefer to keep moving forward. Can't let the past steal the opportunities of the present." "Is that why you're always chasing treasure?" Ilara asked. "Partly." Doreen's gaze drifted to Zira, who was meticulously repairing her dress by the fire. "And for them. We're all just trying to survive in our own ways." Ilara followed her gaze, his expression softening slightly. "Perhaps." The rest was quickly over, and the group prepared to re-enter the cave, determination etched on every face. "Ready to finish this?" Morthal asked, his eyes meeting each of theirs. Balin nodded silently. Zira adjusted her robe, now cleaned and mended to near perfection. "Let's make this quick." They moved with purpose, retracing their steps. This time they were prepared for the goblins' tricks. Morthal and Doreen lead the way, dispatching isolated guards with silent efficiency. As they approached the main chamber, the sounds of goblins grew louder. The bugbear leader stood atop a crude platform, her wolf snarling at her side. The room was filled with goblins, their eyes gleaming with malice. Morthal raised his mace. "For Helm!" he shouted, charging forward. Balin was right beside him, his glaive cutting through the air. Ilara stayed behind and grabbed his bow and arrows. Doreen hid behind a pillar, shooting arrows with deadly precision. From the rear, Zira began to chant, arcane energy swirling around her. "Let's see how they handle this," she whispered, releasing a torrent of fire that engulfed several goblins. She smiled smugly, satisfaction evident. The battle raged, and for a moment, victory seemed assured. But complacency bred mistakes. Ilara, confident in his skills, targeted a goblin engaged with Morthal. As he let loose his arrow, a sudden movement caused it to veer off course, grazing Morthal's arm. He winced, casting a sharp glance back. Guilt tightened in Ilara's chest. "I'm sorry," he hissed. but there was no time for more. The bugbear seized the moment, launching herself at Morthal. Her wolf circled around, cutting off escape routes. "Focus on the leader," Morthal commanded, parrying the bugbear's heavy strikes. Balin was beset by goblins, unable to reach Morthal's side. Doreen and Zira were occupied with other enemies. Then Bugbear's Morning Star connected, smashing into Morthal's shield and shattering it. The force sent him stumbling backward. The wolf lunged, its fangs sinking into his side. Morthal gasped, pain searing through him as he fell to the ground. Ilara's heart pounded in his ears. Images of his family's demise flooded his mind. The helplessness, the loss. Not again. "No!" he screamed, a raw cry that tore from deep within. He sprinted forward. His bow dropped to his feet, and suddenly 2 swords appeared on his hands. Time seemed to slow as he closed the distance. With a fierce determination, he leaped, driving one blade into the bugbear's chest, while slashing the wolf with the other. The bugbear roared, eyes wide with shock as she crumpled. Silence fell, the remaining goblins fleeing into the shadows. Ilara stood over Morthal, his breath ragged. Blood dripped from his blades, pooling at his feet. "You're safe," he whispered, though it was unclear if he spoke to him or to the ghosts of his own past. Balin broke free, rushing to Morthal's side. "Hold on," he urged, pressing a cloth to the wound. Zira approached slowly, a hint of fear in her eyes. "Is he going to be all right?" Doreen wasted no time. She saw all the chests in the back of the cave and rushed searching through them. After a short while, she announced, "Found some potions," though her tone lacked its usual cheer. "Give me one," Balin ordered. She hesitated ever so slightly, eyeing the ornate bottle. "These are valuable." "Doreen," Zira snapped, his eyes blazing. "Fine, fine." She handed over a potion, watching as Balin administered it to Morthal. Color returned to the cleric's face, his breathing steadying. "Thank you," he murmured, his gaze meeting Ilara's. "You saved me." He looked away, uncomfortable under his gratitude. "We need you." Morthal's gaze circled through all his companions. "We're all alive, and that's what matters." Doreen jingled a pouch of coins. "And richer for it. Not a bad day's work." Balin shook his head, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "You're incorrigible." They gathered the spoils, a mix of coins, a golden statue, and goods marked with a blue lion's head, cargo stolen from wagons. As they prepared to leave, Ilara lingered at the edge of the chamber, staring into the darkness. "Something troubling you?" Morthal asked, approaching him. He sighed softly. "I thought I could leave the past behind, but it seems it still follows me." Morthal placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We all have shadows we carry, but you don't have to face them alone." He offered a small, tentative smile. "Perhaps not,"